welcoming everyone, both on screen and in the room. Thank you to all those who are present here today with us at the Baha'i office. Today's in-person Zoom event is co-sponsored by ERI, JCOR, and Pratik, and made possible thanks to a grant from JCOR, Justice Coalition of Religious, present here in New York, Irish Aid, Mission Cara, and Edmund Rice Development. The objectives of these events and of ERI's enrichment Zooms is to create an advocacy networking platform where participants can learn from one another, share their experiences, collaborate with, and support one another. The theme of today's hybrid meet is View from the Margins, Critique and Reflections on the VNR of India, especially from a children's perspective. And we have with us today Steve Rocha and the Pratik team, and the team of panelists, Prasansha Caroline Rai, a teacher at an IBVM school in India, Sister Babita Kumari, from the Medical Mission Sisters, also from India, and Aneem Prakash Indwar, a Claretian missionary, also from India. And we are happy to also welcome our moderator, Teresa Blumenstein from JCOR. For those who would like translation subtitles, they are available, and you can follow the spoken word in your own language by putting on the translation subtitles. If you go to click on Show Captions, which is at the bottom right-hand corner over there of your screen, okay? All right. So you can put on the translation. All right, you need to put on the translation, then choose your speaking language, and then choose your caption language. All right, so it's also available in a number of Indian languages. As always, I invite participants on Zoom to view the presentations on speaker view. And during the presentation, your microphone will be disabled, but the chat box is enabled. So with that, I'm going to just check and see if Brian has joined us. Okay. So Brian hasn't joined us. He was to formally welcome everyone, but I'll do that on behalf of ERI, JCOR, and Pratik over here. And as we go along, we'll introduce each of these different organizations. So, but before I do that, a number of you must be asking yourselves, what is the VNR? And what is this Zoom event all about? So once again, I'm just quickly going to share my screen. Okay, most of you are familiar with the 17 SDGs. Okay, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is meant to transform our world and make life better for all people in all states. Today, all 193 United Nations member states have signed on to this framework to create the future they said we want in 2030. As part of this, the 17 goals are divided into, we could say, 5 key areas. And these 5 key areas are called the 5 P key areas. And they are people, they're focused on people, they're focused on the planet, they're focused on partnership, peace, and prosperity. All these 5Ps need to be present if sustainable development is to take place across the world, not just in one state, but across the globe. So is there a mechanism to monitor the global implementation of these goals and hold states accountable to actions carried out towards the realization of the SDGs? And the answer to that is yes, there is. And it's called the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. This is the platform that meets annually for 8 days at the UN in New York and has just finished its meetings yesterday. Its main role is the follow-up and review of the SDGs at the global level. And the HLPF encourages all 193 states to voluntarily present the national review of the progress made towards the implementation of the SDGs at the HLPF. So these voluntary national reviews, called the VNRs, are a self-introspective review by a state in front of its peers. And they aim to facilitate the sharing of experiences, including successes, challenges, and lessons learned, with a view to accelerating the implementation of the 2030 agenda. They also seek to strengthen policies and institutions of governments and to mobilize multi-stakeholder support and partnerships for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. This year, in the last 2 weeks, 35 countries have presented their voluntary national reviews, and they have focused on these 5 SDGs. SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 14, life below water, and SDG 17, partnership for the goals. And among the countries that ERI has a presence in, India was one of those that presented just on Wednesday. And that is why today we are having this Zoom event, to critique and reflect on the VNR of India. So at this stage, I'm going to invite our first panel of speakers, from Pratik. And we have Steve Rocher, who's the founder and the director of Pratik, as well as the convener of the Nine is Mine campaign, along with his team, who he will call on and introduce as we go along. So Steve, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tino, and thank you, JCOR, for organizing this wonderful event and engaging us and India with its own review. We have with us 4 speakers as part of our panel. First, appropriately, would have to be a child. So Ritu will speak and introduce the process we followed to review this and the government's review on its own SDGs. Valit, who really coordinated the on-ground reviews, will speak next. Soran, who was there in 2015, when the goals were being announced, he was a young child then, has come back to be part of these deliberations and represent vulnerable India at these sessions. And finally, I will speak at the end. So over to Ritu to begin our conversations.
Good evening, everyone. I am Ritu from Pratik and Nine is Mine campaign, a child-led movement that began in 2006, inspired by Nelson Mandela's call to civil society, to citizens, to keep government accountable of their promises. We work across India through a strong civil society network, including Vadana Todo Abhiyan, with whom we began the Nine is Mine campaign. Today we have children's parliament in every state with an elected children's child minister, but based on global goals as global goalkeepers They evaluate goals on the ground and engage with duty barriers to seek their real life issues and fulfillment. Children from our campaign have been part of global literacy since 2013. 1,20,000 children across diverse India, including children with disability, engaged since 2011. And UN headquarters acknowledged it with a special recognition award. They traveled to New York a couple of times, including Soren, who is here with you today, engaged with Amina Mohammed and other UN officials, and presented the 18th goal, all rights for all children. Because we believe no child should be left behind and every child must be heard. Thank you for listening to me. I now invite Anushka D to share about VNR process.
Thank you, Ritu, for sharing the journey of Pratik and the Niners Mind campaign. Greetings from India and a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. I am Anushka and I am here representing Pratik and Niners Mind campaign. So I would like to briefly share about the engagement in the Voluntary National Review process, which we have been contributing to consistently over the years. In 2017, we first began with submitting the children's recommendation to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. In 2020, in collaboration with Vadana Todo Abhiyan, Plan India, World Vision, and others, we co-led an independent VNR review by children. And this year, in 2025, we were invited by UNICEF India and Niti Aayog to facilitate child consultation for India's official VNR, for which we are very much thankful to the government. Through a series of online sessions this year that reached over 3,000 children, an in-person workshop which we held in Delhi, we reached out to 75 children and we ensured that voices from tribal communities, urban slums, and children with disabilities and many more were included in the national conversation. Their message was clear when we had the sessions, whether it's online or offline, that the world cannot move forward if even one child is left behind. So let's make sure that children are not just talked about, but truly heard and included, whether it's in review, in every report, and in every step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka. Hi, everyone. Greetings from India, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you and all the fellow advocates present today. I'm Violet, and I work at Pratyek. So quickly, as Anushka has already told you about the process and how what we have been doing, I would really like to acknowledge the fact that India has made a significant process when it comes to SDGs, especially, and they have been doing exceptionally well in some of the goals for sure. So today, I would like to take you through the work which we have done in this report and what we have been doing with children over the last 3 to 4 months. To begin, I want to thank all the partners and especially all the children who were with us throughout this journey. We have divided SDGs into three different categories, which is inclusion for all, and you can see the goals mentioned here. So due to limitation of time, I will just take it quickly and emphasize more on the recommendation and the realities we are working with. So we GP2S to equity. The second one is we won't cop out, and we HTTP to development. So these are the goals. You would see one goal which Anushka spoke about and Ritu also spoke about, I believe, SDG 18, all rights for all children. Again, due to limitation of time, I will be just mentioning a few of the SDGs, which what the children are saying, what the government is saying, and what we really are currently. So the children mentioned that they want government to declare housing as a right for all the citizens. And Government of India says that they have significantly reduced the multidimensional poverty, uplifting 135 million people. Whereas if you see the actual reports, it is shown that although India contests that they have uplifted the XYZ number of people, but 23.4 crore citizens still are already there below the poverty line. When you talk about zero hunger, which is again one of the major thing when it comes to development, children are saying that ration food, particularly good quality grains, should be provided to the relief camps to improve the health and nutrition of children. And the government is saying that they are nearly there to cover, approx 99% of the eligible people receiving subsidized food grains. Whereas in gaps, you would see the data shows that there is a need for the implementation, quality, equitable access, and systematic underfunding continue to undermine India's progress when it comes to hunger and nutrition for all children. Another important segment which I would like to emphasize upon is when it comes to good health and well-being, and majorly I would like to emphasize on mental health because that was significantly coming when we were talking to children when in these sessions, that they mentioned that government should take steps to ensure the schemes which they are launching are more accessible, like Ayushman and free medication programs and preventable disease, should be covered and insured in that. The government says that over 542 million beneficiaries are covered under Ayushman Bharat and other schemes providing free secondary and tertiary health care. But the reality, we are currently, while digital and insurance schemes are expanding, but the public health remains low when it comes to budget and short of 2.5 target by 2025. Education, another important element that every child should have access. So I'm emphasizing on the human rights word like access and available to smart classes with fun animation, quizzes, and interactive lessons, in schools. And the government of India is saying as well that they have launched national platforms to upskill the teacher when it comes to digital learning, especially post-pandemic era, things have changed. But public expenditure on education still remains below 3% of the GDP, despite having national education 2020, targeting that 6% of the GDP should be given. I'm just going to move quickly to, I'm skipping some of the SDGs, but another important one, clean water and sanitation. Children are saying to install more hand pumps and, have reliable water supply, invest more in water treatment facilities where clean drinking water is available to all. And the government of India is also contesting that under Amrit 2.0, which is another scheme, focuses on universal water and sewerage services with specific improvements in wastewater treatment, and also contesting that every household, 193.6 million households, are receiving tap water in their houses. But when we come to reality, marginalized groups, especially focusing upon the remote, rural, tribal, urban formal settlements, they're still lacking access to clean drinking water. The water supplies are irregular in many areas. I'm skipping some of them and again just jumping to the important ones for now. 13, climate action, climate change. This is a global challenge, and children are saying to involve them when they are talking about climate policies, decision processes, as children are not only the future, they're also the current citizens. So to make them part of what is going to come, after a few decades, they should be part of that as well. And government of India is also saying that 6.8 lakh students engaged in climate education programs and events per se. But the reality is that these things are happening event based. Lack of mention of the grassroots awareness programs, no indication that climate action or climate changes has been integrated in the climate education policy or nationwide, only events are being focused upon. Uh, the last one, which I want to emphasize, which is also my favorite goal, is partnerships for all. Children from all the backgrounds is what children are saying. Children from all the backgrounds should be provided with a platform where they can share their needs and demands, particularly from the vulnerable backgrounds like refugee, migrants, lower caste, gender minorities. There are so many. I'm sorry if I'm missing out, but these are some of the examples I'm giving, but there are so many vulnerable groups. And the government is saying that the data frameworks and the multilateral engagements are pretty strong in India. But in reality, there is no reference when it comes to refugee or migrant children or creating flexible documentation systems for their, including them in the education and other services. And children voices and participation platforms are not acknowledged, despite children stressing the need for inclusive engagement. To conclude, I would like to thank the Indian government for their VNR presentation which they made, India's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goal is both visible and commendable, from improved access to healthcare, education, to growing investments in clean energy, social protection, and digital infrastructure. We have seen a significant progress that reflects a strong intent to leave no one behind, or perhaps leave no child behind. At the same time, behind each statistic lies a human story, a child's aspiration, a community struggle, or a family's quiet resilience. As someone working closely with children and community, I see immense potential for collaboration between government, civil society, and children. I heard this somewhere, and I think this needs to be spoken here, that children just don't need a seat at this table, but they need a say at the table too. And we believe that we are here to work with the government of India, support them. Together, we can move beyond policy into practice, strengthening the systems that already exist and ensure that every child, especially the last child, the marginalized one, feels seen, heard, and supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Violet. I'm going to now hand it over to Soren, who was here 10 years ago as a child, asking for a specific goal on children. Soren is here 10 years hence and was part of the reviews here, representing perhaps majority India that's still marginalized and still wants to see the goals realized in their own slum communities, in their village remote areas, and in inaccessible parts of India. Over to Soren.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone. Very good morning, good evening, and the afternoon to all of you. I'm so happy to be back in New York after 10 years with the experience with the SDGs goals. So I have observed something in the VNR process here. I have seen so many young people when I was going to the UN and seeing around me. I'm so happy to seeing the rich children. They're talking about their struggle and see across the struggle. So I have some question to them, to everyone here who are sitting here in the Zoom meeting also. I don't see children with the disability, the child with the disability or person with the disability, no Dalit, no tribal. When we are talking about the leave no one behind, the UN say that leave no one behind. So why we are leaving those people behind, which SDGs is made for it, and talk about this. So so I'll just go with the VNR process now. The VNR is a half an hour our country present. I'm so happy that India has present 3 times, and this time I have seen that civil society is mentioned in the VNR report, and of course the women and children, they talk about the children also. It's make me so proud and happy. But whole VNR process, it's self-review bluff. It's all made it. Yeah. So if it's a peer questions, it's like a Bollywood, Hollywood acting. Yeah. So it seems like it's everything has created already. So meantime, when I was there in the conference room, I have seen the many country, and our country has only given 2 minutes for the civil society, just 2 minutes only to talk about. Yeah. So this is the I have observed so far in the VNR, and while there is a Lesotho country, I'm so happy they just come over and talk about the reality and their struggle. They didn't put their country in the top and showing, yeah, our country is growing. Whatever the struggle is there, how much their struggle they are facing, they just put through front of all over the country and the UN. So that was so happy and make me so happy for their putting all the things. My personal recommendation to goes to the UN, the people who are participating in this. So I recommend that independent self-reporter can go individual and independently to give the report we follow the UPR reports, right? So UPR reports have some rules like NGO can report directly and give the strong report to the UN, and the NGO can be involved to talk about the reality in the ground level reality, and they talk about the issues which the people are struggling. So now I do suggest to call this UP Universal Periodic Rights Based Report, not voluntary reports, not voluntary review. So I just go and suggest this UPR based report review. So that's my recommendation to the UN, to the people who are sitting on the big chair and talk about the big things. So way forward to me and from 9 is my way forward is in UN. In UN for the post 2030, the new goals we are going to launch. And then I remember in 2000 when I was not, I actually born in 2000. Then I saw after in 2015, then talk about MDGs goals. Before I knowing the SDGs goals, I heard about the MDGs goals. There is a many promise with the many countries they will achieve, but somehow they will come up after 15 years. They said they have not achieved. Now the UN is launching the new 17 goals, which is something is including a new agenda. Of course, there was a 8 and now 17 is totally 100% different between. Okay, so now they are focusing to in 2013 the new goals, which is I am little worried about. They will going to complete these goals or they will just focus for the previous goals. That's the NDG in UN. So another suggestion from my side is NDGs. NDGs is where will child can be include child first, will include the right first, accountability first. Meanwhile, the Qatar is talking about XDGs. It's like extended development goals. So we and 9 is mine just talking about the NDGs, which I mentioned already. That's my way forward with you, and I hope this will become with the strong power and units, and we'll all make it full. Thank you.
Thanks, Soren. Thank you for introducing the inclusive development goals as the way forward, where children will be at the heart of all the conversation and all the goals, where accountability will be at the heart of these goals, and the most vulnerable will be at the heart of these goals. So what I want to do right now is just look at India's presentation and probably present some reflections on it based on ground reality. So firstly, hats off to India, and Bob Ray, the president of the ECOSOC himself, acknowledged India's contribution towards integrating the SDGs into the national framework of the national policy. So it's really, they've really made a consistent effort in embracing the SDG framework, and you see it all across all policies. Also, India still has half the amount of people living in poverty. And so if India doesn't come on board, these SDGs will never be met. Acknowledge Subrat Berry, the vice chair of the Niti Aayog, in acknowledging that the digital India, digital focus, the data-driven focus and delivery has really been at the heart of achieving the SDGs. It's been the third review and quite a good review as well. They've got 260 pages of their review. India has also been at the heart of South-South cooperation and has been championing that movement. The idea of common but differentiated comes up very strongly in all their conversations. But we would like that to be actually reflected in local policies as well. India has a shining India, but it also has a whining Bharat. Bharat is a traditional name for India. And the majority India is still whining and struggling. So we need to focus on that and use the same common but differentiated principle there. Probably put the focus on delivery on the rich and the affluent, and give concessions to the most marginalized. So the challenges still remain in the mere size of India, but India is doing well, good progress. We are 99th now out of the 166 countries, and that's great progress since last year, 109. India has also, next slide, done well in terms of achievement. With 33% are on track, where the world is 35. Limited progress goals are 38%, the world says 50. and worsening, that's really a concern for us, worsening targets 28% compared to the world's 18%. So in some ways, India is way ahead, but other places, lots of challenges still remain. And the big C's of challenges that most countries are referred to are COVID and climate change, and also conflicts. But India has stayed silent about the conflicts within our country. One particular state in the northeast, Manipur, has been under conflict for years now, and has certainly affected the SDGs, and that has been silent in our report. The control of constitutional bodies is something that will come up also. I'll address that in a while. Civil society gags and cuts in budgets. Yes, Donald Trump's policies here affects UNICEF, UN funding in our countries, but also other funding as well. That has affected the delivery of goals on the ground level. Next slide, please. So these are the groups that were consulted, and I think that India has done a great job in including about 1,000 groups, people in these consultations. But if I ask you to look at this page from their own report, can you identify which groups are absent from this particular representation? I would look at Muslims and minorities, and that's quite a big chunk of our country. Refugees seem to be missing here. Transgender people are mentioned, but what about LGBTIQA++ communities? What about conflict areas like that in Manipur and maybe even Jammu and Kashmir? So those are really concerns that we have, and we'd love all to be included. And we love our Prime Minister's phrase of Sabke Saath, Sabka Vikas. Everyone's growth, development is with everyone. Next slide. Yes, the Suman Berry had mentioned that we're heading towards becoming a $30 trillion economy by 2047, India's 100th anniversary of its independence. He talks about prosperity that is inclusive. But if you look at this Oxfam report, it says that the top 10% of India's population holds 77% of the total national wealth. And the last point there, that first one says 670 million Indians who comprise the poorest half of the population saw only 1% increase in this wealth. So is this progress, this GDP growth, this economic growth of India really accessible to all? And then I go down to the last point there. I'm going to take Soren here, who's with me, and his mother as an example. So say it would take 941 years for a minimum wage worker in rural India to earn what the top paid executive is at a leading Indian government company earns in a year. And so is that prosperity really inclusive is the big question we're asking. Mr. Berry went on to say governance is participatory. That's what they're aiming for. But next slide. So many reports across the world talk about India being an electoral autocracy. VDEM talks about that. Freedom House calls it a flawed democracy and a partially free democracy. And look at these counts here where India is under the rule of law in indices. Okay, lots to be done, really looked at here. And probably it's a trend what's happening across the world. Apparently, 90 countries across the world have got these flawed democracy modules. And perhaps that has come strongly in the way forward of the SDGs and whatever succeeds the SDGs. He also talks about innovation that is purpose-driven, and I think we need to acknowledge that in India has driven a lot of innovations. It's probably the IT hub of the world, and lots of progress has been there. But how is it really reaching the most marginalized is a huge question. He talks about cultural and civilizational values continue to guide it, and that could be a bit frightening in a majority-led government. Where principles of the Constitution, which he began off by introducing constitutional values in his speech, and we really worry for words like socialist, secular fabric of India being diminished. So really wondering where is India going in its vision 2047 if the constitutional framework is not really upheld. Next slide. So talking about, he also talks about in his 2047 picture, access to quality and higher education. But there's been only marginal increases in budgetary allocations. And learning outcomes have been really questionable for our children going to public school. He talked about healthcare for all, but high pocket expenses continue to be a huge challenge to the poor, and low public expense spending is also a big concern. And we as the 9is Mine campaign talking about budgetary allocations are really concerned about education, health, and budget allocations here. He talks about thriving and green economy is great, but what about the rural youth and women and farmers and their access to these? And they're going to be left out of all the growth and development that India is experiencing right now. We were worried about strong institutions that he himself claims, and the undermining of constitutional institutions like the judiciary and other constitutional bodies like the human rights commissions. I was at a forum where the human rights commissioner said, we're working with the government now rather than being a counter to the government, which is really wondering what the purpose of a commission would be then. He talked about empower citizens and emphasize youth and women, but we were wondering what about children that are about 35% of India's population right now. So we're worried about expenditure, and since COVID, the last reporting in 2020, social sector spending was as high as 30% or 5% of the GDP, 30% of the total expenditure of the government, 5% of the GDP. And today, as India was reporting, it's down to 17% of total expenditure, almost half that of what India was investing even before COVID. So that's a big concern about social spending. What the government seems to be spending more on is on infrastructure. And this despite the fact that available money to the government for total spending has increased by 7%. So really concerned about where the focus of India is, and is leave no one behind really the focus there. There have also been major cuts in major schemes of the government. The first one is about education, second is about health, the third is about jal, so it's water. Rural employment is the fourth one. Nutrition, which is a huge concern for children of India. So everywhere it seems to be cutting down on spending for the government, except for the area of infrastructural growth. And just the last bit is the government talks about Sabke Saath, Sabka Vikas, a development that is built on inclusion of everyone. But with the majority-driven agenda, we really are concerned about the most vulnerable in our country. It's not only about equality that is being focused on, but equity issues. Affirmative action is being undermined in our country. So we really want to look at a country that's an incredible nation, dedicated to the inclusion of all. That's the acronym for India that we want to see. Because we believe in this African adage that yes, we're going to go faster, we can go alone. And I think India has made fast progress in the last few years with the speed and the scale that Suman Bey spoke about. But to go further, we need to go with all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, Pratyek, Steve, Anushka, Ritu, okay, Soren, and Violet, for your presentation. All right. We've been doing a lot of listening, so I think it's time for a bit of interaction now. So I'm going to turn over to Teresa over here, okay, to put up a couple of questions on the screen. And I invite you to reflect on them, and you have about 3 minutes to put down your responses in the chat. And those in the room are welcome to share it live. Okay, thank you. So the chat is open, okay? The new question really emerging for me, Steve, is does the VNR have any, purpose, being the type of review it is, okay, a self-introspective review, being where there's very little interaction, all right, especially from civil society, all right. Like, has it, I believe it has purpose, okay, but how can it be strengthened, maybe? I know you in your presentation, you all did mention some things over there, but that would be one thing that, how can that be strengthened? How can civil society's role really be strengthened?
So the purpose to me that it serves really is the government is putting its head out on the block to say this is where we are. And so in the very fact that there's a self-report card out there, we can challenge that, have shadow reports, have parallel reports to it. And that in itself is helpful for a democracy to come together and civil society and people who are affected by that to come in. So that's I believe it's a good step forward. It's incomplete, as Solon did explain there. And perhaps independent reviews would be better. And the flagship review system of the UPR could really be modeled there. And perhaps going down, like the Vada Todo Abhiyan, which I'm a steering committee member too, did a very simple approach of having just a scale kind of a review, asking ordinary people to say, how do you think, are you better placed now where poverty is concerned, education is concerned? Very simple questionnaire that was sent around. And that itself is at least an awareness raising on SDGs and the goals and make it more applicable to them and how they can relate to them. They could relate probably to the Hindi terms of the schemes rather than the English version of the SDGs, and that makes it more real to them.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Steve. Okay, and thanks to everyone for their comments and for responding to some of the reflection questions over there. We're now going to move on, okay? And so at this stage, we're going to turn to our panelists, right? And I'm going to first introduce our moderator, Teresa Blumenstein, okay, who is an organizer and advocate for social, environmental, and economic justice. She has served from 2018 to the present as coordinator for the Justice Coalition of Religious, JCOR, at UN headquarters in New York. The shared mission of the 23-member NGOs of JCOR is to strengthen the capacity of members of Catholic religious congregations working at the grassroots and those representing them at the United Nations, and to petition international, national, and regional fora for justice for people living in poverty, address the root causes of unsustainable development, and promote just, equitable, and rights-based development via a just implementation of the United Nations SDGs. Prior to her service with JCOR, Teresa served as executive assistant and representative to the United Nations for UNanimously International, a coalition of 21 congregations of Catholic sisters living and working in over 80 countries. And so I'm happy to now hand over to Teresa, and I'm also very happy that ERI, Pratyek, now collaborating and networking with JCOR, and I believe this is the start of a new relationship. So over to you now, please.
Thank you, Brother Tino. And thanks to everyone who's here with us in the room and to many, many more who are with us virtually. I see many members of both the ERI network, the Mission Karen network, and the JCOR network are all with us today. which makes this an auspicious occasion, especially because we all have such a strong and widespread presence across the country of India. And so it seemed this was a very important moment for all of us to come together and to lend our experiences and all of the insights that we have gained from those experiences to a real people's critique of the progress of India toward the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so it's my pleasure to help introduce two other voices who are able to offer some of that experiential wisdom to our act of critiquing in a spirit of goodwill. And so the first respondent that we will hear from our JCOR network in India is Prasancha Caroline Rai, who is a mission partner of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Loreto Generalate. And Prasancha is a former student of the Loreto Sisters, but she's also been a teacher at St. Teresa's School in Darjeeling since 2013. And she has been the school's animator for justice, peace, and integrity of creation since 2016, as well as the JPIC zonal coordinator for all of the Himalayan zone of Loreto schools for the last 3 years. So we welcome her additional thoughts and insights after having heard the wonderful analysis and presentation from Pratyak. And we know she's also followed the report of the Indian government itself. So we look forward now to hearing the reflections from Prasancha. Prasancha, you have the floor.
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. I'm going to present my reflections as an educator. So I would like to focus on the VNR report SDG 4, that is quality education. And I wish to begin from where Steve left, the line that you said, to go further, we need to go with all. Now, we've all seen that India's VNR 2025 report shows commendable efforts being made by our country as we move towards becoming a Vikshit Bharat by 2047. However, working as a teacher in a government-aided school far away from the metropolitan cities in the district of Darjeeling in the northern part of West Bengal, I'd like to present a few reflections and challenges that continue to exist despite the national achievements which have been shown in the VNR report. Now, as I told you in the beginning, I would like to speak from an educator's point of view and with my first-hand experience in teaching in a government-aided school. I speak with regards to the marginalized section, especially the tea garden dwellers, and I'd like to reflect on the reality at the grassroots levels. Now, with regards literacy rate and dropout, we still see a disparity between urban and rural schools. We see that the literacy rate in the rural schools is still lagging behind, though as per the VNR report, the enrollment is rising and access to education has improved, yet foundational competencies, the 21st century life skills, all these are still lacking in the rural schools. We see that students from these marginalized areas, when I say tea gardens, many of these tea gardens are closed down, so the children have no or very limited access to higher education. Now, those who can afford, they do migrate to the towns to pursue their education, but those who cannot, they are left with no other option but to drop out and look for other means of livelihood in order to support their families. When we talk about infrastructure in the government schools, it is still very dilapidated, not in keeping with 21st century learning at all. Basic facilities like drinking water, sanitation, timely availability of books from the government, proper classroom infrastructure, basic safety measures, all these are still missing in our rural schools. And we do see primary schools where various classes are accommodated in a single room. When talking about inclusive education in the rural areas, I can say, because of my knowledge and experience, that inclusive education is almost zero in these sections of the society. Government schools do not have provisions to accommodate children with special needs. It is there on paper, but infrastructure, trained teachers, special educators, counselors, these still have not been a reality in the government schools. So, social and emotional well-being of the students still has not been given much importance in the government schools of the rural areas. When we talk about technology and the digital divide, the VNR talks about technology in education. It talks about digital schemes. However, the digital divide is starkly wide. Smart classes and AI are yet to be a reality in our government schools. And I would like to reiterate Violet's words when she said, every child should have access to smart classes. Yes, in reality, this is our dream, but in reality, smart classes have not reached every child, not just smart classes. In the lower income category, students do not have access even to smartphones or steady internet connections or even a separate room to study in. We have seen that during the COVID-19, when education was in the online mode, it is these children that suffered drastically, and the gap still has not been able to be narrowed. The VNR states that the government is implementing several strategic initiatives to enhance learning outcomes. For example, the Building as Learning Aid Scheme, the National Achievement Survey, Swachhata Pakwara, summer projects, eco clubs for Mission Life, but these are being sporadically implemented in the government and government-aided schools without any follow-up of the learning outcomes. These are either not being conducted or being conducted just for the sake of reporting. Now, based on my observation and experience of working in this kind of educational setting, I feel that India still has much to do and improve upon this aspect of providing quality education by effectively monitoring the implementation
Okay, we lost.
particularly in the rural areas, by providing in-service training to the teachers regarding evolving pedagogy, by narrowing down the digital divide, by advocating mental and emotional well-being in the schools, and by expanding inclusive education. My final thoughts, India's VNR 2025 report shows that India has made and is making a remarkable progress towards achieving SDG 4. However, these policy commitments must translate into deeper and more widespread improvements, especially with regards to the marginalized communities. And we have to have a clear data, a clear reporting from the grassroots levels in our national picture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prasancha, for your insights from the multiple hats that you're wearing there in an educational setting in Darjeeling. And if we have a moment to look at the chat, you will see that there are educators from other corners of India who were offering their agreement and seconding in various ways some of your key points about the gap that exists between the educational picture that is painted in the Voluntary National Review and what you have experienced, and especially highlighting some of those major inequalities that exist between those schools in urban settings as well as and those in rural settings, as well as some distinctions between different populations of students based on income or perhaps special needs. And of course, it is always our concern as people who are called to serve among communities that have been marginalized, that these communities must in fact be central, must be a priority, and not the last to receive only the crumbs or the scraps that are left when we make a big development effort, but should be the first to receive attention and the ones to be prioritized. So thank you very much for those important reflections. And now we will have the pleasure of hearing from another member of our J-Corps family who is in India. And it will be Sister Babita Kumari, who is a member of the Medical Mission Sisters. And she has been working with various groups of women, children, youth, and refugees in India over the course of the last 25 years. And throughout that time, she has worked in many different corners of the country, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, Pune, and Maharashtra. So she brings a wealth of experience from many different settings, and we look forward to hearing your insights as well. So Sister Babita, you have the floor.
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning to all present in person in New York, and good afternoon and good evening to everyone on Zoom. It's a privilege for me to respond to the VNR of India. I acknowledge the progress report of our country, which seems comprehensive, inspiring, and remarkable. I also support the report shared by the Indian civil society, especially the 5 important suggestions made to the Government of India. With 1.4 billion people in our country, the achievements shared by the government at the HLPF are commendable. But in all this, the group matters. The commitment to leaving no one behind sounds great, but it is also a matter of concern. Development model used in the country for digital public infrastructure empowered billions of lives every day. Yes, but in this process, poor children of the migrant, Dalit, and refugee are left behind. Delivery of all these services mentioned in the report is yet to be reached to the underprivileged and marginalized community. India today is proud to be the 5th largest economy in the world. Yet poverty, health facilities, and social security for the migrants, Dalits, and refugees are out of reach to a greater extent. As per the children's perspective, there is not much progress except the immunization schemes. These schemes has reached to maximum, definitely, but here too, there is a lot of discrimination based on caste economy. I'm happy that Pratik has made a very well critique reflection on the VNR of India in relation to children. Although India signed and ratified in 1992 the Convention on Rights of Children, which guarantees different rights for children, Dalits, refugees, and migrant children, still they struggle to get basic needs met in their day-to-day lives because of many reasons. For the survival of children, they need the most basic services for their existence. We all know, like nutrition, shelter, and access to medical services. They need proper development, which includes their time for play, education, and leisure time for entertainment. Protection is another important factor for children and needs to be safeguarded against all forms of abuse, neglect, and exploitation, including special care. Children of the migrant, Dalit, and refugee, in my experience, face all forms of violence. They are discriminated based on class, caste, place, and their economic position in many places. Their safety is a big question mark as they have no support from anyone, as they are poor, marginalized, and very often are criminalized for small matters. They become prey to exploitation and face all kinds of abuses. Migrants, Dalits, as well as the refugee children also need some basic needs for health, for survival. Nutrition and medicines are important, we all know. Very often, medicines are very expensive, we all know, and it is out of reach of most families of these children in these places where I have worked. The government, instead of giving medicines free of cost without compromising on quality, they are partnering with the private sector, and the poor migrant people have to pay heavily for their health needs. All government hospitals are told on the paper that it is free, but there are hardly facilities except a few tablets for fever and cough for such people, especially for these people. The government needs to provide free medicines for all the poor and marginalized, as they have mentioned in their report how much they have achieved. All types of medicines should be available in the state-run hospitals for free, and the process should be made easy and accessible. Many villages we know are cut off from the hospitals and primary health centers, which are hardly equipped to meet the needs of children and people at large. Here too, they are discriminated based on caste, class, and economic situation, and they have to even face educational problems as they either have no documents in the process of migrating or for many other reasons. There is a need to have attitudinal changes by the government and the elite class towards the migrant, Dalit, and refugee. There is no child-friendly atmosphere in the hospital and also in other institutions. And specialists are, we can't even imagine to have available in most rural health centers. It is high time that the government makes it available to them rather than all the high-tech digitalization made available for the rich and the elite class. There is a need for doctors and the medical professionals at these local centers who are trained to handle migrants with respect and dignity when they come to avail these services, also to show their tenderness and compassionate care so that the children are not scared to go to the hospital for treatment and people do not go to the private hospitals spending all their savings for future. ASHA workers are a good start to facilitate health facilities for the people. Many times they are great help in helping them to avail these services. Anganwadi centers and primary centers should be more strengthened as the ANMs are available for the immunization and taking care of pregnant women, kishoris, and lactating mothers. The government must provide more facilities at Anganwadi centers, which is more accessible for the poor people, especially the children till the age of 14 years. These centers being in a local place They are more understanding and helpful in giving the services to all who come, although here too there is discrimination. However, at least it is better. Children of the migrant, refugee, and Dalit who migrate for labor work with their parents find it difficult to avail these services as they have no documents, as I mentioned. The government process should be made easier for availing health services as well as education wherever they are. With my experience, we have to go pillar to post for them to make the documents needed for these purposes. Migrant, Dalit, and refugee children with disabilities in our country suffer a lot as we hardly have facilities for them in common places. Special attention should be given to their health and well-being. Health facilities should be brought to their doorstep in the need, and they need not struggle to reach to the hospitals in need. Migrant, Dalit, and refugee children do get nutrition food in the Anganwadi, although it is provided by the center and midday meal for the children in particular schools. Due to the top-down corruption involved and paperwork, this gets neglected in reality, and especially poor Dalit do not get a good quality meal in the centers and even in the schools. It largely affects the health and well-being of children in particular. There is a need to form a committee at various levels to inspect and monitor all these services provided by the government. The clinic and health centers in every village, ward in the urban areas, especially in the site where the migrants are working, should be equipped well to respond to the emerging health needs of children immediately. This is a huge problem in most of the health centers and PHCs, as all medicines are not available. The government must ensure the availability of medicines and other necessary equipments needed for emergencies so that patients and their relatives need not run around looking for the medicines and spending their hard-earned money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Abita. And you've offered us an additional layer of our insights, an additional bit of clarity, particularly from the perspective of migrant families, refugee families, Dalit families, whose children face additional barriers to accessing even programs that have already been instated by the government and are in position and could potentially offer much important basic help in terms of healthcare and education, but for whom there are still extra barriers related to documentation and having relocated from either another part of the country or from outside the country, and so are unable to avail themselves of the services that are theoretically available, but remain inaccessible. So thank you for those additional insights from your plethora of experiences across the country. We're very grateful to you for taking the time to analyze and to share with us. And now I would like to invite anyone who is in our physical room or our virtual room. If you have any question or comment, reaction that you might like to share in response to the comments that we've just heard from Prasancha and from Sister Babita.
So you can either do that in the chat, okay? Or if you would like to, if you'd like to speak, okay, just put your hand up. Use the tools at the bottom to put your hands up, to raise your hand so that you come to the top of my screen and so I can spotlight you.
I actually have a comment and a question. Just relation to Steve's comment that there are 90 authoritarian governments that are in our world today. And I think for the first time, it is much higher than the democratic governments. This is according to a report by IDEA, which is an international democracy, and they've been tracking this for quite a while. But what is interesting in their report is that most of these are democratically elected governments, the 90. And so my question is, for us as civil society organizations, how can we work with the people on the ground who we work with and raise their awareness about this current issue, that in fact we are electing democratically these governments that have this kind of authoritarian tendencies? And how is it that we can be able to, before election and after election and during election, analyze these situations? And how do we make us who voted for these people, these governments, accountable for what they promised, which is normally a populist policies, which in fact most of these governments do not deliver, but they basically deliver for the top 1% who funds their elections. So I think that's my comment and my question.
Thanks, Jen. Anyone would like to respond or add to that? And anyone from our Zoom participant group, if you would like to speak, please put up your hand. Please raise your hand. Yeah, for me, it's a very difficult, how do you do this, you know? How do you hold them accountable, especially as civil society? And for me, I think strength comes in numbers, number one. Okay, and so instead of acting even in small groups, how can we join bigger groups? You know, so that's one thing that I would say, and that's a challenge in itself. The second thing would be, how do we create more awareness? And yes, we're having this hybrid event, okay? I'm wondering, how do the participants who are part of this take this forward? Okay, how do we motivate them? How do we encourage them? What platforms do we offer them? Like in the chat, someone said over there, what can we as citizens do? Okay, so what do we offer individual citizens? And I think states are quite happy that the people in their state are not even aware that a VNR is taking place here in New York. Okay, or that a UPR is taking place in Geneva, or a treaty body review is taking place. You know, they're quite happy. They like to come for these events, okay, to sort of appease the international community. But people back home are not even aware, right? So how do we create that? That would be something, questions that I put forward, really.
And sorry, and I just want to make a comment to that. It's very challenging for all of us Christians and Catholics because a majority of our colleagues vote for these people because we do get benefits from most of these governments. They know we have a power and so they will work with us. So I think it is important for us to understand that as a Catholic church, as a Christian church, we do have power in most of these countries. And we protect that and so support these countries. Thanks. Sorry, I have to say
Okay,
that.
Thomas, I see your hand up over there. Sorry. Can I let Thomas?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so Thomas, if you can just put on your camera and or speak. Just can I unmute yourself? 1 minute. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself, Thomas.
Yeah, right now. Good to see you all again in this side event. And congratulations, Steve, for the great presentation you and your team, especially the young students and children who made very impactful observations. My concern really is, the first time in 2017, when India made the first VNR, they said it was the effort of 10,000 CSOs, NGOs. Thank God they have played it down to 1,000 this time. I listened to the VNR and I know most of those consultations did have critical inputs into the VNR that the government said it sponsored with NGOs. But the VNR report itself hardly reflected any of the critical comments that now I heard Steve and the team making today. So I'm just wondering, do we as civil society organizations get co-opted? Because the government does say that it was a consultation made about 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 CSOs, making a great presentation before the world. So I'm really at a loss very often. In fact, when I was asked to come for one of those consultations, I said, I'm not coming because I was afraid I would get co-opted. I think this is one challenge before us, especially after this government from 2014 has come to power. It has been just dressing up in front of the world, making a great presentation. This is a very serious challenge before civil society organizations, getting co-opted by the government and helping government to make a great presentation before the global community. A moment comes when, especially in governments which is very authoritarian, a moment comes sometimes when we have to start disengaging with the government in exercises like this, lest we get co-opted. But congratulations, Steve, for the great critical comments that you made and also the team.
Thanks, Thomas. Okay, Steve, over to you.
So she was going to respond to Janet. On the ground level, there is an aura of fear, particularly when minority companies come into the play and institutions as well. But it's all over. I mean, everyone is walking on eggshells all around. And that's the kind of flawed democracy that we're really dealing with. So I don't know whether we're actually electing who we're electing. So even if we are, we have democratically elected governments, like in Maharashtra, and overnight they bought over. It's the 1%'s money that's really dictating everything. So that's the context that we're living in. So wondering if we at least have a tool in terms of the institutional schools that we have. How many of our schools engage with your processes, Loreto, Edmund Rice networks? Do we actually engage with even the education around human rights language? How much are we pushing there? Are the SDGs embedded in our curriculum? Nothing of that's happening. So wherever we have platforms, for example, even in church platforms, the priests are speaking, can we bring in a human rights angle to our gospels? And even a simple thing like don't ever talk about which government to elect, but you can at least name what are possibilities there, what are agendas being pushed there, and at least say, go outside the church, there's a platform, there's a desk there, please enroll yourself. That much you could do. I don't see our churches, our schools, our institutions engaging even in the things that they can. So they're actually asking them to come and whack me on the head because I'm ignorant and blind and not even wanting to engage with it. I believe, Jekor, and your presence here is so powerful. As Tino said, if we can make use of it more and more. Somebody did ask the question here on the platform, and I did say, go back to Teresa and Tino. You guys have got ECOSOC status. Can you use that more and more and help them represent that, even with the under the cover of secrecy and confidentiality? We can use it. Okay, and that's probably one way to go forward.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Anita Cherian to unmute herself now, okay, and to speak. Anita?
Yeah.
Anita is the JCO coordinator in South India.
Yeah. Hello, and thanks for this opportunity and really good sharing coming up. I wanted to take off where Palitanam just finished. Same kind of concerns. One is when the report itself has false facts, false, claims being made. How do we respond to it? Like the one ration card, one India, one ration card is being, mentioned. I have worked I'm in constant touch with migrants in at least 7 states, so at least 16 or 20 locations, none of which have any migrant who has access to this. Yeah. And the other is issues as serious as in many indigenous regions in central India where mining is prevalent. There are serious health issues related to occupational health like silicosis, which are not being addressed at all and creating severe damages, not just like looking at it from a medical point of view, but from a survival issue. So when we gloss over issues that are really severe, affecting the last and the least, and also have facts which we know don't kind of apply, how do we respond to it being part of the process? How do we respond to it without being part of the process? Either way, we are kind of, in a kind of a fix. So just wanted to know any comments on how you would see, how can we go forward in some kind of a constructive engagement here?
Thank you, Anita, for your comments as well as for that question to the whole group over there. Okay. We are running out of time, actually. We're out of time right now, but we take one more person here. Okay.
Thank you, Brother Tino. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to folks in India. My name's Beth Lissman. I am the UN representative for the US-based Loreto community, a different order than our sisters in Loreto and CJ. But we've long been involved in nuclear disarmament. The thing that surprised me is no one has mentioned that the thing that India has in common with the US and with Pakistan and several other countries is we're part of the nuclear 9. The 9 countries possessing nuclear weapons right now in the world today, with, of course, the US and Russia having and owning the most and probably right now putting the most money into it. With who knows, I'm not sure where India stands on the scale of the 9, but I just wanted to lift up there is currently, and in terms of our dear sister friend who just spoke, Anita, I wish I had an answer for you. All I can say is we're struggling with the exact same thing right now in the US in terms of how to productively work with our government. One of our sister friends who's actually Dominican is with a group called Code Pink in Washington, DC. She was here yesterday getting her grounds passed for the rest of the year. And she's in Congress every day. So I get the scoop from her about what's happening with our Congress and our Senate, and it's not pretty. And we're supposedly one of the preeminent democracies in the world. That is really not the case right now. So I look forward to learning more from you, Janet, about that organization that measures democracy and how to work with that. But back to the issue of disarmament, which I think we need to bring up and talk about the risk. People seem to have totally lost touch with that. And especially our faith-based organizations, which really distresses me, because this is next to, along with climate change, it's an existential threat to our entire species. So I just wanted to lift up a little appeal that's going on from the people at World Beyond War. I just sent this to you, Teresa, in the email. So I'm hoping, Teresa, that you can check your email very quickly and put this into the chat for this gathering. The link to this appeal that basically asks all countries, but especially the Nuclear Nine, one, to commit to a no first use policy, to never be the one to first use nuclear weapons, because we know a nuclear war can never be won and should never be fought. Secondly, to sign on to the United Nations Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the PTNW. I was grateful to be in the room shortly after it passed on July 7th, 2017. The room was electric. I think it was in conference room 3 over at the UN. It was amazing. It was a moment in my life I'll never forget. And then finally, we want countries, especially the Nuclear Nine, to commit to irreversibly dismantling all nuclear weapons no later than August 6th, 2045, which would be 100 years since the bombing of Hiroshima. And please, this year, recognize, celebrate, and pray around the recognitions next month on August 6th and August 9th of the 80th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Our friends at URI, United Religions Initiative, are doing a bunch of work around it. We're joining with them in our efforts. I know some Franciscans are putting together a peace gathering the evening of August 6th, I believe. I'll look for more details and send it to the run list in hopes it can then go out globally. But let's not forget about one of the key reasons the United Nations was created. And my only other thought is for us to continue to hearken back to the founding documents of the United Nations, right? The Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And for those of you who are young and into fashion, we were joking about fashion the other day, but we need like clothing with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on it or something. We saw a beautiful outfit yesterday that someone commented on that was a woman wearing a lovely shirt that said something about human rights. We need to get it out in every single way possible. We need to use our clothing. We need to use the arts. We need to use education, which I know we're sitting around a table of some of the most amazing communities of educators in the world. How can we be using our educational systems to shift culture? I guess that would be my answer in terms of how we share and spread democracy. We need to educate about it. We can't shy away from it. We can't shy away from the nuclear threat. So sorry, that turned into a little mini sermon there. My apologies, but thank you for listening.
Can I make a two-liner appeal? So Soren did mention about the inclusive development goals and the inclusive UN system that we are wanting to introduce across India, but across the world as well. We appeal to all those linked schools, NGOs, congregations to come on board, ensuring that children are at the heart of taking the way forward in terms of inclusive development. So please help us link up with your networks, and there are huge networks right here at this group and across the online groups as well. So that's the
thank you. Thanks, Steve. And we're going to our the last person to speak with us, and that is Vincent. Okay, Vincent, I'm going to, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself? I see you're a CMF priest. Okay.
I'm a clerician. I had been working as a general secretary for JPIC. Now I am working among the non-Christian tribals in the forest area in West Bengal. When I see the VNR reports, what I remember is as my previous speaker spoke, the UDHR, that is Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was prepared as a path for the future. But afterwards, they were made into International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and then International Covenant on Economic and Social Rights, ICCPR and ICESCR. And these have food, education, shelter, medicine as a rights. What the SDGs have done is they have reduced these rights into goals. And then they have given a voluntary report to the government, possibility of presenting voluntary report by the governments. As a result, even if the government is not doing all this, nobody can question them. What was right has become a voluntary goal. And if the government is not doing it, we cannot ask about it. Therefore, what is important is the CSOs, civil society, should have a due representation in the UN and in the VNR reportings, in monitoring it. Secondly, in the UN, there has to be a mechanism where when a country signs a covenant or declaration, it has to be obligated to be executed, not simply endorsing it, not giving simply a signatory, but they have to make obligation to perform them. And then only there can be developments. And we are speaking about India report, and my presenter here said that 10% of people have 78% of the country's wealth. And how can the India claim that it leaves no one behind? It's a great mockery. Therefore, there is India development, and development only for 10% of people. So for which the civil society has to come together in network, work and demand from the governments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vincent. And now I'm going to turn to our moderator, Teresa, and I'm going to invite her, to give the closing remarks and some of her takeaways. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Brother Tino, and to all who have taken the time both to prepare their thoughts and to share them with us today. And surely we have gathered some critical pieces of information, some critical insights, which, as we have noted, for various reasons have not appeared in the presentation that was made by the government of India. But we know that we have a tremendous wealth of experience that is represented by all those who are joining us in person and virtually today. And what is more, we also have represented among this participant group so many vast networks, both inside India and outside India, who are positioned to share these insights much further than this room. And so as our conversation has kind of been coming to a point of what action can we take to follow from this moment? What do we do with the disparities between report and reality that we have identified here today? And what do we do with the frustration that we may be feeling when we observe that disparity? And as we've begun to mention, among us, we have many different opportunities and channels for those observations and for that frustration to create constructive conversation, which hopefully can foment change. And I would like to emphasize that between the network of the Edmund Rice Brothers and Edmund Rice International, as well as the network of the Justice Coalition of Religious, we are here as partners who are both present in India through our regional networks, but also globally, and are positioned within, or at least with a channel into the UN system, to be able to bring together so many of these insights and bring more pieces of the puzzle onto the table, so that we can present the reality and the truth of the problems that we face, and thereby are better equipped to actually address those problems and in a way that is just, in a way that brings the needs of the most vulnerable and the most marginalized into the center of the conversation. And some of the ways that we can do that are through participation in the Universal Periodic Review at the Human Rights Council. We can submit written statements to different UN commissions and conferences. We can have meetings with leaders of UN agencies, with leaders of different government delegations in order to get information to those outside of India where that is important. But then, of course, we also look to work with all of you who are well positioned inside India to continue spreading information about rights, about sustainable development goals, about all the commitments that your government has made, because that information is really the foundation of accountability. And so clearly, going forward from this room, one thing we definitely need to hold on to are the connections we've made here and the partnership that's possible because of that. So I'm so grateful to all of you for your presence and your insights. And I look forward to much continued collaboration going forward.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you for your takeaway. I'm just in the feedback chat, I'm just putting a link over there. I'm going to invite all who are present on the Zoom to kindly click on it. It's basically a feedback, okay, for the organizers of this hybrid meeting. Okay, it will hardly take you 2-3 minutes to complete it, and you can do it later. Just leave it, let it open on your screen and leave it there. Okay. Finally, we've gone way over time, but I see there's still one hand up over there, Simon. Simon, I'm going to give you the floor for just 1 minute. So whatever you need to say, please keep it concise, okay? Over to you, Simon. Okay, and Simon is a young person. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Simon, and unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself, Simon?
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. My name is Simon Jud Anthony. I am from Kuwait. I am the Prime Minister of the World Children's Parliament. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this meeting today. Today's session was very informative, and I had takeaways which we will discuss in the WCP meetings. Thank you, Steve, Swanamam, and Pratik for the contribution and hard work. This motivates us to contribute more as children. We will definitely voice out our opinions to government. We will make the world a better place for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you. And I'm so happy that you joined us, Simon, and you had the last word, really. Okay, so thank you very much for that. And thank you for raising your hand. And thank you to all who have joined us today. Okay, it's wonderful to have so many of you all still online. Okay, even though we are over 15 minutes over time. And thank you to all who have joined us in this room. Okay, it's wonderful to have you here. And after we finish, please join us for a little snack at the back. But with that, goodbye, and we'll keep in touch. God bless and have a good day wherever you are.
You know, before you turn it off, so thanks to you and Teresa putting this together.
Yeah.
Lots of work went into that, and thank you for making these dreams possible. Thank you, Tino and Teresa.
Thank you.